Okay.
Well,
Yeah.
just this morning, I was notified that I've been named the number one management guru in the world for the third consecutive year.
What?
Wow. Wow. And Bob, was your cousin the one that voted for you?
Yeah, all 3 votes came in, and, but that's above,
Yeah.
the next 3 or 4 people are from teach at Harvard Business School and etcetera,
Wow.
but,
Wow.
kinda fun.
Yeah,
Congratulations, man.
congratulations. And Mario, you said that Dr. Bob is what'd you say he was?
I said,
The
in the
guru?
business world, he is known as the guru of thank you.
I don't recall, but, I got I got, yeah, I've done some magazine covers, and sometimes they come up with fun stuff like that.
Okay. Well,
Well,
listen.
he was on CNN and all these other top TV shows and all.
That
60 Minutes, 60 Minutes.
that,
So that's one of the things that. So before we go any further, I want to give you guys the opportunity to. We jumped right into the fun stuff, but I want to give you the opportunity to introduce yourselves and a little bit about. There's just a quick snapshot of who you are, and then we'll get into the details of everything else. So, Dr. Bob, would you please let our audience know who is this guru of thank yous?
that is I. No, I've kind of devoted my career to, helping managers better engage their employees, better motivate their employees, which really comes down to kinda common sense, treat them treat them well, and they like, you know, you don't want your spouse to be a nag, treat her like a thoroughbred, you know? It's and a version of that for employees as well. If you treat them like they're important to you, they're gonna return the favor.
And so you're an author. You're a very distinguished author, and you've written several books. Could you just briefly talk about that?
Sure. Yeah, it's been my journey. I'm just completing my 32nd book, 1,001 Ways to Grow Employees. Be out later this year, and it just went into production. And I'm probably most known for 1,001 Ways to Reward Employees. That came out 30 years ago and is now in its 66th printing. Has sold about 2 million copies. I've sold 5 million books overall for my different titles.
Amazing. And so the way I was introduced to you was our other guest is Mario Tamayo.
That
Could you
deadbeat.
That would be me.
so Mario, could you please briefly introduce yourself?
Yeah, at one point I worked for Bob. Bob was
You don't
vice
still?
president vice president of product development for the Ken Blanchard companies, and Bob was a top executive there with the company, and I was the director of product development, and my team was able to create over 250 leadership resources that are still in use today, and that includes things like situational leadership and building high performing teams and um, legendary and raving fan service, among others. I worked for many years for them, and then I went off on my own and have been working as a coach and as a consultant. And Bob, just a couple of years ago, actually, Bob, is 5 years ago now.
Really?
Bob invited me to be a co-author of his, and we wrote a really, really fun book. In fact, we had fun in the title, and there it is. Work made fun gets done.
400 specific real life examples of how you can make any task or group activity or more fun and what you can do as an organization to make that part of what it means to work here.
And those were tips and uh, processes and procedures that were voluntarily shared with us from public and private sector companies, from government and educational agencies, international mom and pop organizations, and all of it points to one thing. And Bob was alluding to that earlier, and it's really probably the 1 minute. I mean, the top leadership management principle of all time, and it has to do with what gets recognized. Bob, I forgot what.
Gets repeated, gets rewarded. So again, if you treat employees well, they will reciprocate. Whereas, as Walt Disney said, when in his career, he is young in his career, he had an epiphany. If I ever get a chance to manage people, I will treat them as I'd like to be managed, knowing that if I treat them like they're my customer, they will treat the company's customer the same way. And that's really the foundation of Disney's success over the 55 years they've been in existence.
And Bob and I took that one step further because, as Bob mentioned, that most people know what the golden rule is. Do unto others the way I want to be done unto,
Sure.
roughly paraphrased.
Sure.
But Bob and I, we subscribe to something that we think is even greater. It's called the platinum rule. And it's basically the same thing as the golden rule, except for 2 words. And the 2 words are do unto others the way they need to be done unto. And so we look at what does the person need, not what I need. It's if I'm going to serve somebody, I'm going to do what they need, not necessarily what I need, because what I need may miss the boat with other people.
Well, let's explore this a little deeper, because especially we're talking about managers and leadership. How does one go about those folks determining what other folks need?
Well,
Bob.
and that's very common with managers. They when they think to motivate their employees, they think what would motivate them, and they're in a different stage in their career, different circumstances, and so that's not. It's better to just start with what does the employee want. So by talking to them, by asking them, by getting to know them, you can anticipate what things would be helpful for them, knowing that for most every employee, they're looking to get ahead and advance and support themselves, their family, and better enjoy life. So that's kind of a fundamental. But within that context, as you get to know people and ask them their preferences for being recognized and the things they're going on in their life. Do they have any family? Have any kids? What are their kids' names? Have any pets? What are their pets' names? What's their favorite food? Favorite flower. The more you know about someone, the more fodder you have to motivate them. Not to manipulate them, not to trick them into working harder, but actually to sincerely help them on their journey, which in that then they will reciprocate and want the manager to be successful as well. Because if you have a good manager, it's only one out of every 4 or 5 managers you'll have in your career that you'll think is a good manager. So, and when you get one, you want to hold on to them, and you think twice or 3 times about leaving because the next person is likely to be a jerk, and so there's a real resilience that comes from doing this common sense behavior of treating people right.
And so,
There's 3 basic reasons why people leave their organization. Number 1 is they're not getting enough recognition. They're not being valued for who they are. Number 2 is their boss. People don't quit companies, they quit bosses. And then the third one is they're not getting enough career development. And if we take care of those 3 things, then you're going to have a standout organization.
Yes.
yeah.
Career
So,
go ahead.
yeah. Well, my question is, I actually have several questions. But one of my questions is, when you talk about determining what that person needs, and you alluded to what that employee wants, where I could, and all
What they
wait,
need, not what they necessarily want.
yeah,
Because sometimes,
that's what I'm saying. Like what
yeah,
they need, because I'm talking about, like, some people need a little more structure, some people need a little more room for creativity, and what you said, Dr. Bob, what you said about especially talking about what the person's favorite color, food, pet's name, all those things, and certain people that are in leadership roles don't necessarily always have that high EQ where they are genuinely interested in those things. And it's like, is that something that comes up in teaching and coaching of how to increase
Absolutely.
that?
It's sort of like, well, if that's the case, and if you're not inclined this way, or then you got maybe have someone on your team that does it for you, or you got to, at least try try something. It doesn't have to be. There's no one answer. So, give you an example. I was working with a CEO in Manhattan, and and actually having a beer with him, and he said, "Bob, I just can't praise people to their face. It's not who I am." I said, "Well, that's that's too bad, but you don't have to praise someone to their face. You do have to do something, however." So let's look at the book here, and let's talk about what you might consider doing. Excuse me, got a cough. Pardon. But he came up with he was going to start. He was the CEO of this company for 25 years. And he'd never done it, but he's going to start having a breakfast once a month and invite one person from each department to attend. And he did the first one, and they had an open agenda. They just went around, everyone talked about something they were excited about in their job, including him. And he did one of those meetings that goes, I can't believe I haven't been doing this. He learned so much about his own company. And for every employee that came, they immediately, guess who I had breakfast with, to their spouse or significant other. And, things are happening, and over the course of the year, he had FaceTime with every employee, and just help to bring the company a little bit tighter together, and allow people to get to know each other about things that they're excited about.
And
Dr. Bob,
open up that line of communication too. So maybe it's again, I'm assuming based on what you said
Yeah,
is
meet
that
someone you didn't know, and now you've got someone in accounting you can ask a question to, and yeah, you just bring a tighter company, tighter team working towards the same goals.
now Bob did some research years ago, and there was a stark difference between what employees said, how much recognition that they get and how much they want, to how much managers thought they were giving. And
Yeah,
Bob, do you remember that?
yeah, kind of classic study actually was initially done in 1949 by Lawrence Lindell, and it just very simple. I think the best research is very simple. What do employees want? And they had a list of 10 things, and they asked managers, "What do you think of this list that employees want?" And they said, "Well, of course they want more money, and they want benefits and job promotions." Those are the top things. Then they took the same list and asked employees, "What of this list do you most want?" And they didn't say any of those things. They said they wanted a sympathetic ear listening. They wanted to be recognized when they do good work, and they wanted a chance to grow and learn. Well, none of those things cost any money. The other things cost a lot of money. And wow, maybe if we focus on those, we'll be farther along. And so the irony, which is I've always been amazed at, is that the things that have the most value to employees typically have the least cost. It just takes a little time, a little thoughtfulness, but you don't have to have a big budget, to make this happen. So when I work with smaller companies, they say, "Well, we can, we don't have a budget to motivate people, i.e., we can't pay people more." I go, "Well, why don't we let's take inventory of what you do have. You got daily contact with people, you've got access to top up management, you're not rule bound by a 300-page policy manual. You can this afternoon to celebrate, you can go do a popcorn lunch, right, Mario?" Which we did a few of those. And we're gonna go to the movie together. What do you guys want to see? And I'm buying
I,
popcorn for everybody.
I have to tell you, one year when Jurassic Park came out, remember the movie? This is way before you were born, Dustin.
sure. Yeah. Okay. Glad you think that.
Jurassic Park came out, and we decided, you know what? We should take our whole department out to lunch and then go to the movie. And what we said was, we're gone for the afternoon. We've got a paleontology workshop that we're going to.
Okay.
But we
A
used
little
to
bit of a
do
stretch. Yeah.
we used to do a lot of that kind of stuff, and people just loved it. They just
I loved it.
absolutely
Then
loved it.
maybe other employees were jealous of it, and I would get heat for having done it. But you step up to say, "You know what? Our team our team, they deserved it. They earned that. It wasn't just a gimme. It was, look at the goals we met. Look at the customer satisfaction we have. So we're taking time to notice that, to celebrate it, because we're never too busy to celebrate excellence.
Let me go back to what Bob was saying about the one CEO who had never really given face-to-face recognition to anybody.
Sure, please.
What we found was that most employees, I think it was about 96%, said they really could use more recognition. And when they talked to the bosses, 40% of them said, "Well, I do it."
Well, actually, 80% of bosses says, "Oh, I'm really good at that."
Oh, that's what it was. That's what it was.
and only 12% of employees say they get meaningful recognition. So it's a big disconnect.
And one of the reasons is again is a lot of people feel uncomfortable. They don't have the skill set to give that kind of feedback. We found when we were with Blanchard, we found that there's 4 times as much negative feedback given than positive feedback.
And actually, Gallup has updated that research, Mario. They put it at 6 to 1.
Oh, 6 to 1 now.
Yeah, 6 to
So
1.
what we recommend is, hey, you gotta actually take your managers, your leaders by the hand, and you've got to show them what physical and verbal and even writing skills look like when you want to give feedback, and it has to be genuine. And one of the things we had people do is we said, you know what, put it in your calendar that you're going to get up and walk around, and you're going to find people doing the right thing.
Or start the meeting with some type of recognition. Hey, before we get started, I want to call out so and so finished a project, or Mary finished a degree, or someone had a birth in their family. Does anyone else have any praisings they want to call out? And have it be a group activity. And if you've never done that, the first time it's kind of awkward, but then people get into it and they will remember and things to share, and off you go.
And it compounds. Then other people want to do it because it feels good, and it's great to
Absolutely.
be able to do that. So, I think that's a great point. And one of the things that you alluded to is it cost you no money. And there's an expression, the most important investment is paying attention. And
Yeah.
really that's what it is. It's just paying attention and being aware, listening intently. But I want to talk a minute about you guys when you started, when you first connected, when you worked together at the Ken Blanchard company. Was most of the foundation of how you think of things and leadership, was it a part of the company culture at Ken Blanchard? And I think I'm leading this question into a broader question. Like, how much did you learn there in the foundation of how your formative thinking versus how much you've learned the rest of the time being coaches and being working with other organizations? I'd love to hear like how that gradually evolved.
Sure. Well, obviously, Dr. Blanchard was a big influence in both our lives, and still is probably.
Oh yeah.
He's very consistent. He's very simple, but it's on the things that matter the most, which I found to be pretty common on great people I've known. Peter Drucker, very simple, very clear. Management is getting the work done through others, not being a super worker, not I'm a coach for Marshall Goldsmith, the world's #1 executive coach, and very simple. What he focuses on, and relentless on focusing on the simple things that actually make the biggest difference. So, on that level, learned a lot from others, and tried to, integrate those into what I do to help others with. How about you, Mario?
Well, one of the things that Ken is known for is the 1-minute manager. And Ken's gift was to be able to take a lot of complex subject matter and get it down to 2 to 3 secrets. So when he wrote the 1-minute manager in 1982, was it, Bob? Something
Yeah,
like
about
that.
that. Yeah.
He had 3 secrets, and it was all about 1-minute goal setting, 1-minute praising, and 1-minute reprimands. He's since changed the reprimand to something different, more palatable.
What does he
But
call that now?
I'm getting old myself.
Reframing? Maybe 1
Yeah,
minute
something like a
reframing?
or a 1 minute redirection, I think it
Yeah.
was calling. Anyway, so he had the fertile ground there for us. Now I came in from General Dynamics, and I had but one of the things Ken would say is catch people doing things right or catch them doing things approximately right if they're new to the task or the goal.
Good
And
good
so as a
thoughts not
recognition, oh, go ahead.
good thoughts not delivered mean squat. That's
Yeah,
he had a bunch
exactly.
of 'em bunch of them.
Yeah. And he's famous for a lot of that. One of the things that I brought in was on this recognition, I brought in an awards process. Now at GD, what we did was we had what we called like a People's Choice Awards, and they're all based on the company values. And we said, we want you to nominate your peers here, nominate anybody in the organization who you find living out the values. And when you nominate somebody, if that person wins, then you have right of first refusal to make their award. We're coming up to low or no cost here for awards. And you also have the right of first refusal to deliver the award, to give that person the award. Now, when we first started doing it, we had people standing going, that's never going to work. Oh, how that's hokey, blah, blah, blah. And the first time we did it, it was a huge success. I'll give you an example. One person gets up there and she's giving the Rookie of the Year award, which she made. She took baby shoes and she painted them a certain color and she mounted them, and it was beautiful. Well, she was able to tell the story about who the winner was. And she gets up on stage, she shows the award, she explains what the award's for, and then she tells the story behind it. And we're the people who put on the awards, we're sitting back at the head table. We're looking around to see how people are reacting to this. And so Mary, the person who's giving the award out, she says, so and she's telling the story, and we're looking around, we're saying, do you think Terry knows that it's her yet? And not yet, not yet. And so we're looking around, and as Mary gets further into the story, we could see Terry, her face change, her hand, her gestures come up. You could tell that she's realizing that I'm the winner here. So Mary finishes, Terry jumps up, she goes up there. They're both crying. They're both crying, genuine tears for this. She gets the award, she gets a standing O, and the person who says this will never work jumps up and he goes, damn, it does work.
Eureka.
So we had 3 to 4 awards per company value, and people loved it because it wasn't just something that was out of a catalog. It wasn't money. It wasn't a check. It wasn't a gift card. It was something that had meaning to that one individual person. And what happened over time was people said, I want to win it. I want to win that award. And they started putting it in their goals for the year. I want to win X award for next year. Well, I took that process. I ran it for 6 years at General Dynamics, took it to Blanchard, and they're still doing it. I introduced it to them in 97, and they're still doing it. So it's a big thing. And that's just, yeah, Blanchard was fertile ground because he cared about people. It was all about servant leadership.
Yeah, well, I love that. And this is a big part of, the show of tools, talents, and techniques. When you find something that works, and like what are the techniques that you use? What are the talents that people have? So, are there any other examples that you can give of techniques that people have implemented in their organization? I mean, I know you can. And actually,
Bob has how many 1001 Ways books do you have, Bob?
6 of them doing that, or 1,501 ways to reward employees. So,
well, give them the rest of your titles for the 1001 Ways.
No, putting you on the spot now. I'll give you all the titles of books that you read.
1,001 ways to reward employees, 1,001 rewards and recognition field book, 1,001 ways to take initiative at work, 1,001 ways to engage employees, and now coming out 1,001 Ways to Grow Employees, which is just going into production with my publisher, HarperCollins.
And again, most of these ideas, I would say what, Bob, 90% of them are low to no cost.
Yeah, maybe 2/3 are
Two-thirds, okay.
no cost, but they're
Oh, yeah,
they're
'cause
all
we're
they're all real. They're all actual. I mean, I'll add some my own tips and stuff, but it's probably 90% is this is what so and so's doing, and this is what they said about this is why they did it. Here's the results they got. Where you have it, but it's all real examples. It's not hyperbole.
Well,
and
is
I
there is
think
there sorry, go
I
ahead, Mario.
think that one of the best ways to operationalize these things is we highly recommend this to each manager. We've had it where a company will buy the book for each manager or for each department. And at their meetings, at their weekly meeting, biweekly meetings, what they do is they pass the book out and they pass it around. They said, we want you to put your initials next to the things you like to do
Or like to have. So
or like to
so it becomes,
have.
a personalized handbook for your immediate team. Remember when we worked with the Del Mar Fair, Mario, the
Oh,
HR
yeah,
director
yeah.
there,
Uh-huh.
she showed me the book that she'd gotten years ago and passed it around, asked everyone to make a commitment to draw something from it, and in different inks, they would circle an idea they're gonna do, and they'd sign the book, and it was just covered with signatures, and so it became an active
Were there
document.
were there any that were circled more than others? Like out of this,
Oh,
was there
yeah.
one that was like, oh, everybody likes this idea, or majority of the people like this?
Well, again, the top of all the thousands of ideas, the ones that, resonate the most are the ones that are simple, direct, low cost, so a personal thank you to someone, face to face, in front of others, in a written note, um
Genuinely ask me how I'm doing is another big one. And you mentioned earlier, listening.
Yeah, so it's again, it's kind of under the radar for most people. They go, "Well, what about bonuses?" And then, well, that has a place as well, but less so than you think. If, in fact, I've run into examples where I remember seeing in first class, the guy next to me was, we got talking about this stuff, and he goes, I got I was, top manager for this company, and I got a bonus. I worked hard for it. It was like a 15, $20,000 bonus I wasn't expecting, and for the job he'd done. And the CEO gave me this check, and he goes, "Here's your bonus. You think he earned it?" And he turned and walked away, and I was like dumbfounded. I go, "Wait, if you think I didn't earn that, then we got a bigger problem." And within a couple months, he quit. Because
Mm.
so sometimes you can give them money and do more harm because you're not connecting with or not knowledgeable about where the person's at and the fact that they did really earn that.
That reminds me too, is it's the rules of giving genuine feedback. People get feedback and I can't tell you how many times they're told something they did well, and then immediately after, the person who's given the feedback says, "But," and then they
Yeah,
give the negative.
here's where you need more work,
Yeah,
so
and the
and that's
focus is on the negative stuff and not the positive.
it's like going to a nice restaurant and you get a instant coffee when you leave. That shadows the whole experience,
Well, so that being the point, when you said the 1 minute rule that Ken Blanchard had, or has, so 1 minute, 1 minute, 1 minute, and he it seemed like he ended on that redirect or
if
the
needed.
reprimand or if needed. So
Yes.
do you suggest that people start with that then in
Well,
these?
you gotta be careful because there's something called the feedback sandwich, and it can be disingenuous. And that's where people start giving a positive feedback first. Then they jump in and give all this negative stuff. And at the very end, it goes, "Oh, and then again, you're doing this well." Well, people start to see though that whole thing is just as a guide to disguise the negative.
It's
What we say is,
insincere.
yeah, it's
Insincere.
very insincere. What we say is give the positive, give the constructive, and reaffirm to people so that they feel that they're valued. It's not a sandwich. the whole thing is we're helping people to grow and get better, and always let them know that they're valuable.
Yeah. Or another even more I'll talk about, Mario, just save the constructive feedback. You know, do you need to tell them right now, they got the report done on time. So there are a couple typos in it. Is that what you want to spend your time with now? Because they're probably not going to do it for you next time if you do that. So maybe next month, let's talk about, you're doing a great job. Here's some things that I thought maybe you could improve on if you want that feedback.
Well, here's a true story. Bob, you might remember this. This was when computers
Mario,
first
I'm
came
older
out.
than dirt, so probably not. Go ahead.
We were using Microsoft Word and then also PageMaker. So this is how old this was. And I was creating an assessment, a leadership assessment. And it was only about 8 pages long.
But it was one of the company's top products.
Well, it was the top product for assessments. And I just relied on spell check. Now, there are certain words that come through that are spelled correctly, but they have a completely different meaning in context with what you have. And I made
that type of stuff. Yeah.
Or the word manger and manager.
Yeah. Okay.
So, Bob, tell them what happened.
I do remember this story, Mario, and so we we printed the final printing of the assessment we've been working on.
10,000 copies.
Yes, and that mistake ran through it, and Mario was scared he was going to be fired,
or at least beaten up. At least beaten up.
And I if I recall, I when he told me about it, I said, "I bet you'll never make that mistake again."
He said, no, that's not what you said.
Oh, that was in the mix. What was the initial reaction?
No, it was, well, this is a good learning for us, is what it was. And so what can we do differently the next time? That's what it was. And that was all it was.
Focus on the learning instead of the fall. Focus on the long term instead of the here and now ego of you made a mistake, I'm going to grind you on it. It's like, who needs that?
Well, that's amazing. So, okay, I definitely want to dive into this, because that sentiment right there of looking at things like a learning opportunity or an instance, not everybody has that. Not everybody has that.
Of course not.
Mental
EQ.
It's EQ.
But they can learn it. They can do it. They can encourage each other. It could be a company value. I worked with WD-40, and I spoke to all their worldwide leadership. And at one point, I started talking about mistakes, and their CEO at the time, Gary Demarest, as soon as I hit the word mistakes, he said,
"No, it wasn't Gary Demarest. It was Gary something else."
Yeah. Gary Ridge.
Was it Gary Ridge?
Gary Ridge.
Yeah, he's shout out to Gary Ridge. He was a guest on the podcast. He's fantastic.
Nice.
He's now doing.
You guys kind of look alike.
Who, me and Gary?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, I'll take that as a compliment.
At any rate, not to sidetrack my story, Mario, but so I said, talking about mistakes, and Gary said, Dr. Bob, we don't have mistakes here. We have, and the entire group, like 300 leaders in unison, said learning opportunities. And I said, we're done. I was so proud of that moment, and that the fact that they had well traveled this topic and had integrated a different approach to just finding fault and catching people making mistakes, to say we have learning opportunities and we have them daily.
Let me ask you this: like that sentiment, that way of being and thinking and feeling, because I believe it's all of those things. When in your life did you always have this? Did your parents show you this? When did you start to incorporate that in your life?
I was raised a Catholic. I will say no more. I'm kidding about it. Actually, my parents, no, they always were looking for perfection on that end, which is why I think I wanted to find a different way. because it didn't work for me. Bob?
I had, I can just remember, unconditional love from my folks and, support. Um, but, it's an iterative thing. You learn along the way, from Ken Blanchard, I've learned from Mario. You learn from your experience. I've worked with thousands of companies, and each one I worked with, I pick up something, that, wow, and I know when I see something I've never seen before, then I know thousands of other people would never have heard of it either. So, that's my criteria for, so if someone goes, talking about ways to reward people and someone says, "Well, we do a years of service award." Well, okay, so do 92% of other companies. That's great, I guess. But but what's more meaningful? How do you really connect with your people? Tell me, talk about those things. And it's easy to open that door and have the exploration and so a lot of times it's trying to pull what's working from the people you're working with because they're all siloed. And so sometimes, before I work with the company, I'll say, "Hey, I want to do this. Can you send an email out to all your leaders, ask them for um, an example of a recognition that worked well in their department?" And now you get back, a couple hundred examples, and they're all over the map. And now you got a playbook you can give to a manager that's not doing it or a new manager, and then they all have their names on it. So call that person up if you want to find out what they did next or how it worked,
Mm.
so that you help turn them into a learning organization. Like I worked with NASA, Johnson Space Systems in Houston, and and NASA's rated number 1 in best place to work in federal government, and which is saying something, out of 2.7 million employees, and when I worked with them, it was like there was it was easy for me to see why, because
Mm.
they were living their values. You could see them all around. You could see them in the interactions. And I remember I was sitting in one meeting, one manager's meeting, and they got to the end of it, and the person who's hosting the meeting said, "Well, as is our custom, we're going to take the last 10 minutes and go around the group and ask everyone to share something they've done to recognize someone in their team since we last have been together. Who wants to go first?" And you see people, "That's a great one. I'm going to do that." And they share these ideas and they're egging each other on, and the excitement's going up. They're very engaged, and well, there you go. They're on the path. They're a learning organization that's keeping getting better at something that's working for them. So
I
that
think that's a great example.
yeah.
That's great.
And,
Now, one of the things that companies are learning is not to give everybody an award or everybody the same thing. Bob, can you talk about turkeys?
Loses value. Yeah, that makes sense. If you flood the market, it loses value.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, one size does not fit all. So sometimes it might sound more convenient. We're gonna do the same thing for everybody, but it's gonna often undermine your motivation. So, yeah, there's so many examples like this, but the one that Mario has pushed me towards is something Lockheed Martin did back in the day, in manufacturing, and,
Hey, wait, by the way, before you do this, don't get me in trouble with some defense contractor telling them what they
No,
did.
they're doing it different now.
Go
No,
ahead.
they're fine.
They got too many missiles for my liking.
You're not going to get hit by a cruise missile.
Okay, cool. All right, go on. I digress.
It's a positive story. They learned from it, and so they were, if companies tendencies for companies to do anything, they're going to do it around the holidays, and so maybe we should thank people so in particular, and a lot of companies do this. They at Thanksgiving they gave out turkeys to their employees. Kind of a thoughtful gesture, and and they thought they were feeling proud of themselves, and then they instead they got complaints from employees that Sally got a bigger turkey than I did. So so they next year they called the vendor and tried to order 3,000 turkeys that all weighed exactly the same, and the vendor probably biting his tongue to say, "Well, there's the actual variance in turkey weight, so we can't do that." And so they, as the story goes, they gave out the turkeys, but each one got a note with it that the exact weight of your turkey did not reflect your performance, blah, blah, blah. So it's kind of
Okay.
silly, but that didn't end it either. People got, they got more feedback. My VP personally delivered turkeys to us. They lived near him and something, and well, my VP didn't do that. And so they kept the more they did, the more disengaged employees were, the more and more actually upset they got, and finally they pulled the plug on it when they found that so, one or more employees was taking the box the turkey came in and throwing the turkey out and packing tools from the from the manufacturing plant to get through security. So ouch. So they were so disgusted by it. They were so you could be engaged or you could be disengaged or you can be actively disengaged. And then in terms of looking to undermine things and then they said, we got to change this. And they had me in and they did focus on realize that okay, it'd be more meaningful if we made it more personal and had managers do it with their immediate people, not try to do it from people that don't know them. And so there is a lot of learning there.
Yeah. Well, that's great. That theme of the learning and being able to take new steps, take advice or find different ways to incorporate things. I think that's so important. But along that lines of that question, have there been any examples of teams or companies that you've worked with that just can't get it? That, you could give them all the 1,001 ways to do anything, but they're just won't get out of their way?
Well, in my doctoral work on this topic, I did my dissertation on non-monetary recognition, why managers do or don't do it, and I found that yeah, that in general, the larger a company is or the older it is, the harder it is to change. They've been doing it this way forever, and so it's hard for them to turn over a new leaf. And so it's still doable. It's just going to take a little bit more swings at the plate and more, like I said, it is doable. So like I worked with Bank of America when they had over 200,000 employees, and one of the things that we found was that there, as we're trying to do stuff, and you always have cynics and stuff, and actually commercial lending were the biggest cynics, and they openly laughed at those HR types. It's like they try to dream up stuff like we don't know, we don't have anything to do, and they just mocked the whole thing, and we rolled this program out, and I said, "Well, we gotta build accountability into this," which a lot of people view as a negative word, but you can be positive accountability, ways to remind people. And so I got them to put their line of business recognition scores on their monthly leadership update for all leaders in the bank. And the first time they did that, commercial lending, who was the biggest critic of it, they came out dead last. and, and the VP stormed out of the room and said, "We will never be last on anything that's put in front of the leadership of this company." And so they were the biggest critics, but they became the biggest advocates. And we knew we had them when, like 6 months later, they were before the meeting. They were calling, anxious to get the numbers because they'd been working on it and they were trying to get up, up to number one. And so they were now they were leading the charge.
Yeah,
So
that's great.
it's and I got another thing we did there, for example, because that's one department, but every manager needs to have a role. So I got them to implement a policy that anytime a group got together in the bank, whether it's 3 people or 300, we're going to start with some type of recognition, just as a touchstone to come back. It could be what happened this week. It could be tied to our core values. It could be a personal, but some type of recognition, and to keep the topic active and alive. And then a lot of times you can open up the floor to anyone else that'd like to add to that. And I've worked with a lot of companies that just something as simple as that can help turn the tide. I worked with the manufacturing firm in Montclair, North Carolina that did made radial tires and seatbelts, and they had a big plant, and they had a morning all hands thing to launch the day, and it would inevitably start with number 2 turbine went down last night. Jerry was out getting coffee. No, I wasn't, you bastard. And bam, 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 bam. I said, you know what? You're killing yourself here. Now everyone's going to be pissed off the whole day. I'm going to get even with that clown, And I go, it's good that you're meeting daily. Start on a positive note and get that going. And then if you do that, you're going to drown out the negative and the cynical. And now people are actually going to be glad they're there and how hey, let me help you with that problem, And and so it went. And so using the same thing turned it around. So it became the strength, huge strength.
Yeah.
Or say I was working with the IRS, and one of the things that they did was they'd have managers listening on calls with taxpayers, people call in, and they'd listen until they found a mistake the person, the IRS employee made, and so they'd write it up and then go on to the next person and do the same thing. I go, it's great you're listening on calls, be close to the customer, but make just one little change. Listen for what they did well, and then write them up for that, and then go on the next person. And now, because if you focus on something they did well, they're gonna get better at that. Even they'd be glad they're here. They'd be glad they're working for you. It's a whole magic thing that happens. Whereas if you slam them for some small mistake they made, and you son of a bitch, and if you get written up like that a couple, 3 times, that they docked your increase in your salary. It was just like, why do you want to bring people down? Bring them up.
That little paradigm shift of focusing on the positive, it seems so small, but it can change everything.
All
And
of
being
life,
able to,
actually.
yeah. So I have another question that it involves all of this and what we're talking about and what you specialize in. And I know specifically in sales, many times, and it's not isolated to sales, but many times people that get promoted in certain roles are the people that are technically good at the thing that sometimes good sometimes
Uh-huh.
good performers aren't good managers, and not every good manager is a good leader. And so how can you talk through that? Because I'm sure that's a big part of what you do and have to deal with.
Well, it does come up, and everyone tends to be promoted for technical skills, and the higher you go in any organization, the more your success is going to be based on things that aren't technical, on communication skills and soft skills and that type of thing. And it's hard for someone just to hear that and pick it up and run with it. So you've gotta help them make that transition. Or you can be. I've worked with like I worked for a computer company where we created a dual ladder for advancement. So you didn't just have to go into management to make more. You could be a technical leader and actually get to be to an executive level as a principal technical person, but not managing people. And so we legitimize it's okay. You, everyone doesn't have to be great at managing people. And if you're great at something you're doing that's important to the company, let's find a track for you. And that helped the problem extensively.
Oh, I like that. I like that a lot. That's Mario. Does that track with your thinking?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. That's
Well
why they
said,
have
Mario. Well said.
training programs. I'll be honest with you. A lot of training programs don't work out there because you, in my mind, you got to do a better job of recruiting and hiring and hiring people with a better fit. Can they do the job? Will they do the job? And will they fit in the organization? That's what we need to look at.
Yeah.
Bob, you're going to say something?
Yeah, well, Blanchard would talk about that, you can either hire winners or you can hire what's the other category? Potential winners, basically,
Potential winners. Potential
So
winners.
winners are people that already have the skills, you can drop them in the job. if you don't have the skills, they're not going to do the job. So you have to allow time and effort to
When
get
it
them up
comes
to
to the
speed.
when it comes to the soft stuff, we're talking about core values of individuals and aligning with the core values of the organization. If somebody is being hired and their values are very distinctly different from the organization, sometimes it's really hard to get that person to genuinely act in the way that people want them to act in that organization. So you can do all the training you want sometimes, but it's not going to work unless somebody's back's against the wall and they're in a significant emotional event, and then maybe they can change. But people when they hear me say that, they go, "Oh, sacrilegious! You're out of the HR training." Well, I am, but I'm also pretty realistic about it as well.
So at that point, when it comes to hiring those certain things that maybe not as um measurable, there's certain things like, oh, they've done this and that. Like, how might you recommend a company or a firm find those other attributes of a potential employee?
Well, couple things. One is companies got to be very clear on their websites about what they're looking for, and they got to be serious about it. The other thing is they have to do a better job of asking tougher questions in interviews. And if they can't talk to other people about the person that they're considering. Um, some people are very good, not liars, but they're very good at putting on a facade, and those are tough to figure out sometimes. But if you do ask the right questions, you can tell in the interview if they're making it up or they're fudging something there, or they just don't know. Because
And once they're in the job, again, going back to make it making it clear the expectations, making sure they've got the tools and information to do the tasks they're being asked, and providing the support they need. So even if someone isn't crackerjack, they could, if they're intent, if they're motivated, they can make a go of things. Um, I think that's legitimate as well. It's like everyone isn't gonna be a perfect hire, and, ideally, if employees take more initiative, both Mario and I coach people, but, one of the things is, if employees take the initiative, they can be interviewing the company to make sure they get a good fit. If you come into an interview and you're prepared, you know about them, you have questions in hand, that could be, much more proactive in seeing yourself in that role, and they'll see you, that way if you come across with that attitude. So
Bob wrote a book about that. Bob, what's that called? Don't.
I got please don't do
Mario,
oh,
you
no.
keep putting
Oh,
them
no,
on
no.
the spot.
No, no, I know the titles of my books, so the the
What
job
is it?
hunt, the biggest job you'll ever have, and so, how to, find meaning in work, and that will motivate you. I had, I work with a great group called the, Honor Foundation that we coach, elite military, US Navy SEALs and Green Berets and Rangers and whatnot, and transitioning to civilian work. And like one of the tools that the program uses is called 50 cups of coffee. That in your search here, you got to connect and talk to at least 50 people. Actually, in their research, they found it's actually closer to 75. That to get the job, you got to talk to a lot of people, and that's very different than just sending resumes in unsolicited to companies.
So I'm actually in the show notes for this. I'm going to include the links to, both of your websites and all of the books that you've written, or as many of the books as I can fit in the show notes, because you guys have been
Well,
participating in
on
so
my
many
website,
things.
I've got a bookstore on my website that
Okay, so we'll include that link, and that'll have everything there. So thank you for not only being a guest on the show and sharing these insights, but also for what you're doing in the world, because I think companies need this. They need to understand. I think people need that. Employees, companies, communities. I think it's really important. So it's been an honor to have you both on the show. But before we take off, are there any parting notes you want to give the audience? Anything you want to share?
Well, likewise, it's been fun talking with you, and always good to see Mario again, and, appreciate your words of encouragement. We're out there, swinging every day trying to make a difference, and it's great with like, I had the other thing, you don't need much to keep going. I had somebody that emailed me, a couple weeks ago, and they said, "Dr. Bob, when I read your books, it's like you're personally giving me permission to do the right thing." I'm going, "Damn, that's why I want on my tombstone right there. He gave us permission." So, yeah, you hear that, then I'm up for, weeks. It helps you, get by the bad days, the down days, or the politics of our day, and to, allow you to keep focusing on things that can help people make a difference.
You know,
Mario,
that seems to validate the crux of most of your work, of focusing on that positive and giving people positive feedback, so
Mhm.
it'll encourage them to keep going and do better. So that's perfect.
I say, you just keep trying and cut yourself some slack. Nobody's perfect, and do it with people. Don't do it to people. The more we can do things with people, the more ownership's gonna be there, and it's gonna work out.
or as Dr. Blanche used to say, the best management is what you do with people, not to them, and they could tell the difference.
Well, gentlemen, thank you both. It's been a lot
Dustin,
of fun.
thank you, Dustin.
You're
Appreciate you
welcome.
making time for us.